Hey everybody, how's everyone doing here today? Hope everyone's doing good. Sorry if there's a little bit of noise in the background. I'm making tea. Hope everyone's having a good week thus far. We'll give it a few more minutes just to let people gather together, gather in. Trying to grab all my chats here so I can make sure I can read all the discussion. Like I said, we'll just give it a few more minutes for everyone to come on in. Finally, my kettle's calmed down a little bit. It sounded like a rocket was about to take off. How's everyone doing? I hope everyone's having a good week thus far. Don't be shy. We always like participation. Not be shy. Now it looks like the chat is having trouble connecting to one of the platforms. I'm going to try to restart it. See if that fixes it. Hopefully. You never know with technology. There's a lot going on at once, so... Yeah, it keeps showing an error. Well, I might have to have two sets of chats opened up. Guys, I wish you could see in the chat like normal, but it's, Oh, there we go. That's one message popping up. Mario asks, is this YouTube only? No, it is not. We are currently on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. And my chat usually displays all three platforms, but right now, Mario says this is Yoshi. Oh, good to see you, Yoshi. Yeah, on Twitch, I'm on my FBC Leadville channel, if you're interested in going over to Twitch, but you don't have to. You can hang out on YouTube. My chat normally displays all three, but it's not doing it right now. And I may have to just roll with it. Every time I keep trying to get it to show FBC Leadville chat, it shows an error, which isn't encouraging. And now is not the time to try and solve an error. Mario says sounds good. Very nice. Well, I will just read off all the chats to you guys. And I'm sorry you can't see the Twitch chat. Liam says, hey, Tanner, how you doing today? I'm doing good, Liam. Matt says, oh, goodness, what is happening audio-wise? So much static. It was the kettle. Got you. Yep. Sorry about that. Full throttle on the teapot. Liam says, week has gone well so far. Good. Glad to hear it. Matt says, shot 2 under par on the back 9 of the local course. I'll take that. That sounds great, Matt. Well done. Now you're here for some Bible study. Awesome. Very cool. Let's see, we got Faith Life going. Shirley says, good evening, Tanner. Good evening, Shirley. Good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Glad you could be here. I'm sorry our chats are so all over the place. Donna says, the Custers may be able to chat. Well, it looks like they can. It looks like they can, Donna. Well done. Look at that. Well, I may be spread out across 3 different chats on 4 different platforms. But you know what? We're doing it. And that's the key. The key is we're doing it. So I'm on my other screen here trying to make sure I can see everything. Good. We got Shirley on Faith Life. We got Custers and Mario, i.e. Yoshi, on YouTube. We've got Jesse and Matt and Liam all on Twitch. And Yoshi popped over there as well. So, guys, I've given plenty of time. And now it is time to begin. We got this tea. I will tell you right now, the tea is a raspberry herbal tea. So when it looks really weird, it's because it's raspberry tea. Okay? So don't freak out, anybody. Pastor Tanner's not drinking any blood or anything like that. Okay, it's just raspberry tea. All right. Cool. Well, I'm so glad you guys could be here with us this evening. We're on Apologetics lesson number 7. Apologetics lesson 7. It's crazy how fast these are going by. And I hope that you're excited to get into some good information tonight. As you guys know, we've been going through Timothy Keller's book, Making Sense of God. This is part of a 2-part book series. And I read The Reason for God a long time ago. And Making Sense of God is the prequel to it. And I think it more encapsulates and captures some of the spirit of what the sorts of things we're dealing with right now, right? And so I've decided to move forward with Making Sense of God from Timothy Keller as our primary text. Part of the reason I bring this up every time is I want you guys to know that none of this stuff's original to me. I'm not some genius, right? It's Timothy Keller is who I'm getting a lot of this material from. He got it from Bahnsen. He got it from Van Til, and just on, right? There's a lot of influence in a lot of different areas, but I want you guys to know that that's the primary text I'm using for this study. So if you were to pick up Making Sense of God, it'd be good for you to pick up. But to read through it, you would recognize a lot of the same argumentation. A lot of my quotes are coming from that book, all of those things, okay? So I just wanted to make that clear to everyone. So let's, without further ado, get into the review. We are on question 3, okay? Question 3 that gets brought up is, how can Christianity provide meaning that suffering can't take away from you? That's what we're focused on. How can Christianity provide meaning that suffering can't take away from you? It's not to say that other worldviews can't provide meaning, but the meaning they provide, at least secularism, the meaning that secularism provides, does not allow for suffering to not conquer it. That kind of meaning is vapid and doesn't satisfy. Here's a quote we had from Fabian Suchanek from the Atheist Bible. It says this: how about yourself? Do you have an intention for your life? He's talking about meaning, right? If yes, then this is the purpose that you have given to your life. If your intention is to make money, then making money is the purpose that you have given to your life. If your intention is to be happy, then being happy is the purpose that you have given to your life. Congratulations, you now have a purpose of life. It is, quite plainly, whatever you choose it to be. You are the one who chooses what to do with your life. We got this from the Atheist Bible, right? Shirley says, we were just talking about the book here. Shirley says, I purchased the book on Amazon Kindle edition. That's awesome, Shirley, and I hope you'll be blessed by the reading of it, and I pray that it will help you and guide you, and you're going to see a ton of overlap with what we've been going through in this study. So very, very good, Shirley. I'm glad you're able to pick that up. Awesome. So, atheist meaning, atheist purpose, And for our case, we're going to call this secularism. Secular meaning, secularistic purpose comes from what you decide it to be, okay? This is from the Atheist Bible, Fabian Suchanek, but that's not the only place. We also had this quote from Daniel Florian. Daniel Florian says this: "It is true I do not have an absolute purpose in life. I am not dedicated to glorifying God anymore, but I find creating my own purpose to be thrilling. I'm an author of a novel, and the book is my life. The freedom is exhilarating. Life is as happy and meaningful as you make it." So again, here's the idea. Here's the idea in secular culture. You create your meaning. You create your purpose. Why? Because we've done away with God. God can't give us meaning and purpose. And so we are instead turning to ourselves. We're the ones who are going to create our own purpose and our own meaning. That's the idea. Okay. That's the idea behind all of it. And so we have sought to critique that. We asked this last time. Okay, that sounds nice on paper. It's fun that we can create our own meaning. As Daniel Florian says, it's exhilarating, right? But does it actually work? Okay, and what we mean by that is, does it actually accomplish the thing that it seeks to accomplish? Okay, is it actually effective as we go throughout life? That's what we're asking ourselves, right? So we asked last time, how would you critique this? And we said we would utilize the twofold apologetic method. The twofold apologetic method has been our standard this entire time. We're on lesson 7 now. So if you don't have twofold apologetic method down yet, you're going to have to go watch some of the previous studies on YouTube. Okay. The twofold apologetic method is to both answer a fool according to his folly and not answer a fool according to his folly. You do both. Okay. What does it mean for us to answer a fool according to their folly? What does it mean to answer a fool according to their folly? And this is your chance to get on your keyboard and type away and tell me what you think. What does it mean to answer a fool according to their folly? This is taken straight out of Proverbs, guys. What does it mean to answer a fool according to their folly? Got Vectorax popping into Twitch. Good to see you, Vector. Welcome, welcome. Okay, Yoshi's got an answer over on Twitch. Answer a fool according to their folly. The Custers have an answer over on YouTube. Very nice. What does it mean to answer a fool according to their folly? Jess also put an answer on Twitch. I'll go through some of these. Yoshi says, step into their worldview and show inconsistency / folly. Good. When you answer a fool according to their folly, you're trying to demonstrate that the way they look at the world, their worldview, their perspective is off base. It's missing something. Something about it doesn't comport, right? You're trying to demonstrate inconsistency or things like that, right? Jesse says, step into their worldview to show the inconsistencies of argument. Good, good. Exactly. The Custers say, step inside his worldview. Exactly. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, okay, this is how you view the world. And again, we're not creating straw men here, right? You're not just saying, well, atheists should believe this, or you're saying, okay, this is what you're telling me. Is that correct? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay, if that's what you're saying, then I would think this to be true. How then do you believe that? And that's the sort of thing you're trying to do when you answer a fool according to their folly. Liam says, to answer a fool according to their folly is to look at what they are saying and ask them how they account for their position. Exactly. You guys all nailed it. This is exactly what we're talking about. And that's what we did last time. Last time on this question, question 3, right? Question 3, how can Christianity provide meaning that suffering can't take away? We're talking about meaning. We're talking about purpose. What we've been designed for. What do we do? Why are we here? Right? Why are we here? Shirley puts the why question. Exactly right. The why question is your shortcut to always be answering a fool according to their folly and not answering a fool according to their folly. Shirley nailed it. The why question is so key. The why question is so key. If you can't remember anything else, just ask why. And we're going to see how that goes tonight. We actually have a certain case tonight where we're going to be talking about the why question and bringing that up. And you guys all nailed it in terms of what answering the fool according to their folly is. You're stepping inside of their worldview in order to demonstrate that it leads to foolishness. Okay? You're not calling them a fool, but what you're saying is their worldview ought to lead to foolishness. And because they live in a world that isn't foolish, they should know their worldview doesn't comport. Okay? That's the idea. Now, what does it mean to not answer a fool according to their folly? What does it mean to not answer a fool according to their folly? Martin stepping in on Twitch says, hi guys. Hello, Martin. Welcome, welcome. Glad you could be with us this evening. What does it mean to not answer a fool according to their folly? Again, this is our twofold apologetic method, guys. We have to have this inside and out. Whenever you're in a conversation with an unbeliever, you are either answering a fool according to their folly or not answering a fool according to their folly. You're constantly trying to do that the entire conversation. Answer a fool, not answer a fool. Answer a fool, not answer a fool. Martin and Jesse both answered on Twitch. Good. Got an answer from the Custers on YouTube. Very nice. Custers say, step into Christian worldview and show how it answers life's questions. I love how that's put. That's how you do not answer a fool according to their folly. An atheist comes along and says, give me evidence for the existence of God. They're trying to bait you. They're trying to get you to follow them down this path. No, don't fall for it. Instead, don't answer a fool according to their folly. No, here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to show you how, within the Christian worldview, our life makes sense. Life's questions are answered, and they're answered well. And then I'm going to show you how, outside of the Christian worldview, life's questions aren't answered well. Okay? So, Jesse says, to demonstrate your worldview and the biblical consistency. Absolutely. That's absolutely right, Jesse. You go into the Christian worldview and you demonstrate how it's consistent in contrast to the unbiblical worldview. Martin says, it means to answer biblically. Exactly. We're not sacrificing the Bible. We're not saying we're not going to go into the Bible for the sake of apologetic argument. Instead, we answer biblically. We follow what the Bible has to say. Yoshi said he had to take off from the Bible study, but he says Godspeed. Thank you, Yoshi. Take care. All right, good, guys. Shirley says, we do not use their presuppositions. So good, Shirley. That's exactly right. We don't use their presuppositions. Instead, we assume our presuppositions. Okay? Very good review. Now, last time, we talked about, on this third question, purpose and meaning in life, we answered the fool according to their folly. And we went into two questions. Is this a cogent and consistent position? And we tried to demonstrate that the secular perspective on purpose and meaning is not cogent and is not consistent. So we asked that question. And then we also asked, does it work practically for living your life? And we tried to demonstrate that no, you can't practically live your life well if you don't have purpose and meaning that is given explicitly to you from God. Okay? So on the cogent consistent, we had this quote from Terry Eagleton. I'm not going to read this whole thing. Well, I will read this whole thing. Okay? Terry Eagleton had a great quote. He said, are you not assuming a value-laden structure that you are using to critique all other approaches to life? Somebody comes along and says, there's no ultimate purpose or meaning. You just create your own meaning. How do you know that? Where did that come from? They're inventing it. They're assuming a value-laden structure, and they're critiquing other perspectives based upon it. And are you not then actually giving a universal answer to the meaning question, namely that the meaning of life is to have the freedom to determine your own meaning? You see how they universalize it? They don't say they're doing that, but that's exactly what they're doing. They're saying, this is the standard for meaning and purpose. You make it yourself. How do you know that? They couldn't have made that up. They're trying to say it's the standard, right? So they're trying to set an absolute standard in a world where there can't be any absolutes. And in that sense, it's rationalistically foolish, okay? It's inconsistent. And then we ask this. Does it work practically for living your life? Okay, does it work practically for living your life? Again, a quote from Terry Eagleton. Life is what you make it view seems troublingly narcissistic. Do we ever get outside of our own heads? Isn't a genuine meaning one which we find ourselves running up against and one which can resist or rebuff us? We pointed this out. If genuine purpose and meaning is very fluid, and you can do whatever you want and you just make it whatever you want to make it, then if you run up against resistance, if things get difficult, if things get hard in the search for applying your meaning in life, what happens? You just change your meaning. It's that fluid. It's that easy to adjust. But we recognize, no, we know that genuine purpose, genuine meaning actually impacts us, changes us, shapes us, molds us, points us in different directions. And it's important for us to recognize that if our understanding of purpose and meaning doesn't shape and mold us in that way, then maybe our understanding is wrong. Okay? And so we noted that last time. Again, this is all review. This is the key, guys. This is the key. Okay? The meanings that secular people have are not discovered, but rather created. They're not objectively there. They are subjective and wholly dependent upon our feelings. You may determine to live for political change or the establishment of a happy family, and these can definitely serve as energizing goals. However, I want to argue that such created meanings are much more fragile and thin than discovered meanings. Okay? We need to recognize that while we all use the same language, purpose and meaning, okay, we're all talking about the same thing. What am I here for? Why do I exist? What is my purpose? What's the point of life? What is my meaning? Okay? When we use that language as Christians, we are using the terms in different senses than the secularists are. The secularists are using the terms meaning and purpose to describe a created meaning and purpose. When Christians use the terms meaning and purpose, we actually mean discovered meaning and purpose. What is the difference between a created meaning and purpose and a discovered meaning and purpose? I'd like some reactions in the chat on this one. The difference between created meaning and purpose and discovered meaning and purpose. This is the essential difference between secular understandings of meaning and purpose and Christian understandings of meaning and purpose. We have to know the difference between created meaning and discovered meaning. What's the difference, guys? We talked about this extensively last time, but it's kind of where everything coalesces. It's where everything comes together. Martin's got an answer on Twitch. Good. I'll read that momentarily. This is essential, guys. We have to know the difference between discovered meaning and purpose and created meaning and purpose. Good. The Custers have an answer on YouTube. Very nice. Liam's got an answer as well. Good, good. Start with Martin. Martin says discovered meaning means that the meaning is objective. It actually exists. Perfect. When we talk about discovered meaning, we're saying it's out there somewhere in the universe. Okay? It's objective. It actually exists. If all meaning and purpose is simply created, when human beings die, meaning and purpose ceases. It no longer exists because it's simply created by us. It's a construct. In a sense, it's a figment of our imaginations. It's just something that we're inventing for ourselves, right? So that's what created meaning and purpose is. On the one hand, it feels freeing because it can be anything. The possibilities are endless. They're limitless, right? But on the other hand, it turns out to be vapid, to be fake, because it is in ourselves. It's something that we make up and invent. And in that sense, it's not really there. Just like Martin says, discovered meaning actually exists. By implication, created meaning doesn't. It's just something we decide for ourselves. The Custers say, discovered meaning apart from our thoughts and feelings. Created is made up yourself. It is subjective, not absolute. Exactly. Discovered meaning is something that actually exists out in the universe. It's apart from thoughts and feelings. And we go discover it and we recognize, oh, this is what it's about. This is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what it's like, right? That is discovered meaning and purpose. Created meaning and purpose is something that you just invent for yourselves. It's subjective. It's not absolute. Good, good. Liam says, created meaning comes from you. Discovered meaning comes from outside of you. Exactly. Jesse says, created meaning is arbitrary. Exactly. You're just making it up for yourself. And you can change it however you want. There is a world of difference. You have to hear this, guys. There is a world of difference between created meaning and discovered meaning. There's a world of difference between subjective meaning and objective meaning. And we're going to drill more into that tonight. What did we do last time? We answered the fool according to his folly. We stepped in and tried to demonstrate the inadequacies of that worldview. Tonight, we're going to not answer a fool according to their folly. And we're going to demonstrate how Christian discovered meaning is truly more valuable, more helpful than non-Christian created meaning. Andrew Riggs says, created purpose is subjective based upon the individual. Exactly. Discovered purpose is outside of individual locus of control. Nailed it. Discovered meaning exists beyond us, and we are figuring it out. We are coming into contact with God, and He is telling us what our meaning is, what our purpose is. Created meaning instead is something we invent. Very good, guys. There's a world of difference between the two. Now, Keller says this. This is our contention for tonight, and this is what we're going to spend the rest of the tonight talking about. Discovered meaning is more rational, more communal, and more durable than created meaning. Okay, all three of those things. Discovered meaning is more rational, more communal, and more durable. Okay, all three of those ideas. Those are going to be our three arguments in order to not answer a fool according to his folly. How can Christianity provide meaning that suffering can't take away? To not answer a fool according to his folly, we are going to use these three areas to demonstrate that the Christian understanding of meaning and purpose, a discovered meaning and purpose, is more rational, more communal, and more durable than non-Christian or secular created meaning or purpose. Okay, that's your three-pronged attack. And I've been trying to learn chess a little bit. So, some people know this, and many know that I'm very bad at it. There's an attack that you can do against the enemy called a fork. Okay, a fork. It's a very powerful attack. It's when you attack more than one piece at a time. Okay, you have a three-pronged fork with which to attack the secularist on this point. How can Christianity provide meaning and that suffering can't take away from you? Your three-pronged attack is it's more rational, it's more communal, and it's more durable. That's the approach you can take to attacking the secularist stance or position on the topic. Okay? Let's see, I have some more interactions here. Liam says, what do you mean by durable? We're going to talk about that. I'll give you a hint, a foreshadow, Liam. It has to do with suffering can't take it away from you. Okay? What we're going to see is that created meanings are very weak. They're fragile. They fall apart easily. They're not strong. They can't withstand the storm. Okay? And we're going to see that discovered meanings in God, in Christ, are durable. They last. They stand up in a storm. Suffering can't take it away from me. If you have a secular created meaning or purpose, and difficulties, suffering, and trials come along, you're much more likely to falter. But a discovered meaning will stand the test of time, will stand up in the storm. Good question, Liam. Okay, let's get into this. So tonight, we're going to not answer a fool according to their folly. Last time we answered a fool according to their folly on this topic, meaning and purpose. Now, tonight, we are going to not answer a fool according to their folly. So first, how would you answer, again, three-pronged fork to attack the enemy with, okay? To attack the secularist with. And I don't mean that in a mean way. We don't do it mean-spirited, right? I just mean that in a logical way, okay? How is, this is the question. I want you guys to think of this and give me some responses, okay? How is meaning and purpose from a Christian worldview more rational than meaning and purpose from a secular worldview? How is it more rational? Okay? What do you guys think? Because that's the argument we're advancing. We're saying Christian meaning and purpose is more rational because it's discovered meaning and purpose. So how is discovered or Christian meaning and purpose more rational than secular or non-Christian meaning and purpose? By rational, we mean it makes more logical sense. If someone were to think about it logically, if they were trying to advance arguments for it, discovered meaning or purpose makes more rational or logical sense. Okay, Jess gives an answer on Twitch. The Custers have dropped an answer on YouTube. Very nice. Give a little bit longer and then I'll read these. Again, my whole goal in the study, guys, is to just teach you to think in the right ways. Okay, I don't want to give you fixed answers, right? Like this is the exact answer that you're supposed to give in this situation. I want to teach you to think in the right ways so that when you're engaging in real and genuine conversation with the unbeliever, you have tools in your toolbox with which to ask good questions. Okay, and so don't think you're going to type in the wrong answer right here. Okay, this is about provoking thought and actively thinking about the situation. Okay, Martin gave an answer as well. Good, good. Let's go through these. And keep typing in your answers if you'd like to. We're going to cover them. Jesse says, it's more systematic and logical by being objective. A subjective meaning is often more intuitive or feelings oriented. With a question mark. See, I like that you're just trying to think out loud, Jess. Good. It's more systematic and logical by being objective. A subjective meaning is often more intuitive or feelings oriented. That's a good way to put it, right? What you're essentially trying to get at is, look, if meaning is something you just assign to yourself, it could even be nonsensical, right? Like I could, presumably, if meaning and purpose is fluid and you can do whatever you want, right? My meaning and purpose could presumably to walk in the woods, snow armored melting, right? And you're like, that's not even a logical sentence. Exactly, right? If meaning and purpose is so fluid that you can make it whatever you want to be, it doesn't even have to be logical. It doesn't have to make sense, right? Whereas a discovered meaning and purpose is going to have some sort of logical content to it. So good. Jess is throwing some ideas out there. The Custers say, has demonstrable evidence to back it up that all people can recognize, whereas truth in your mind is often truth for you, but does not work for everyone else. Yeah, very, very good. We noted earlier in our study that secularists love to lean on science and evidence and facts, right? But a subjective, created meaning or purpose is completely unscientific, right? There's no way to test it. There's no way to observe it. You just create it. It's whatever you want it to be, right? And so there's no demonstrable evidence to back it up. So in that sense, while secularists love science, the meaning and purpose that they're creating is so unscientific, right? And so that's a very good point. I like that. That was from the Custers. Martin says, it's more rational because the arguments for what meaning and purpose is has an objective standard. God's word. Created meaning is simply a preference. You can't argue for a preference. I love it. I love it. That's very, very strong, Martin. What Martin is essentially saying is if meaning and purpose, and we're going to get into this tonight, but I want to expound on what Martin is saying here. Martin is saying if meaning and purpose are something you just get to decide for yourself, on what basis do you critique anybody else's meaning or purpose? I think all of us would think that it's horrific if somebody's meaning or purpose was to be a serial killer and rack up a high death count, right? That they killed a lot of people. I think we would all intuitively say that's a horrific meaning and purpose. But if it's purely subjective, if you only create your own meaning and purpose, on what basis? It's simply a preference, right? And that's what Martin's getting at there. Good, good. Thank you for your answers, guys. Those were excellent. Okay? So, we're going to make a rational critique and not answer the fool according to his folly. We're going to demonstrate that Christian discovered meaning and purpose is more rational than secular created meaning or purpose. Okay? Keller says this. If this life is all there is, and there is no God or life beyond this material world, then it will not ultimately matter whether you are a genocidal maniac, like I just described, or an altruist. What does it matter? Ultimately, everything we do is radically insignificant. Nothing counts forever. I think that's a good critique from Keller, right? He continues. Now, as we have said, Many people in the postmodern culture believe we should train ourselves not to answer this meta question about the point of life. See, what Keller's pointing out here is that when you begin to recognize that this one is true, when you begin to recognize that ultimately if the only meaning and purpose you have is your own created meaning and purpose, it becomes radically insignificant. What he means is, okay, who cares what you think, right? Well, I created my own meaning and purpose. I don't care. Who are you to create meaning and purpose? What does that matter, right? And when you begin to realize, like, oh, it doesn't, then your life is radically insignificant. It doesn't matter. Nothing counts. Nothing means anything, right? Because we created it ourselves. And so what Keller is pushing on here then is what ends up happening because of this. What secularists run to is they realize that, logically speaking, this is the conclusion. They realize my life is radically insignificant and meaningless. But they can't square that with their emotions. They feel constantly like their life should mean something, like their life should have a purpose. And they begin to act that way. But when they think too hard about their perspective, they begin to continue to get pushed towards insignificance. And so there's this push and pull in the secularist mindset, where it on the one hand says you create your own meaning and purpose, but then that leads to, well, then I'm insignificant. And then on the other hand, well, let's not think too much about this then, because that hurts, right? And they can't square their emotional experience with their explicit doctrine that you just create your own meaning and purpose. And so what do? They essentially tell you, try not to think about it. That's essentially the secularist answer. And what does that amount to? Irrationality. If rationally thinking along the lines of your worldview leads you to pointlessness, and that's unbearable, and your response is don't think about it too much, then what does that lead you to? Rationally speaking, your worldview is compromised. It doesn't actually accomplish what you set out to do with it. And so Keller continues. Many people in the postmodern culture believe we should train ourselves to not ask this meta question about the point of life. They must disconnect what their reason says about the world from the world that they are experiencing emotionally. Their reason, if they were to follow secularism down to its logical conclusion, says my life's meaningless. But they don't like that conclusion, and so they just say, I can't think about this anymore. Here we have a quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. Okay, he was a Supreme Court justice, for those who don't know. So you may not know his name, but he was a Supreme Court justice, a really well-known one, actually. Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. once wrote to a friend and said, if one thinks coldly, a modern person has to admit there's no reason for attributing to man a significance different in kind from that which belongs to a baboon or a grain of sand. Okay, if one thinks rationally, okay, thinks coldly, he says. He says, you're no different in kind from a baboon or a grain of sand. Human beings are just like a baboon or a grain of sand. But if that's the case, and this is what Keller inserts, but then he added that when he begins thinking like this, it is time to go downstairs and play solitaire. What does he mean? I need to distract myself from my rational conclusions. My rational conclusions hurt too much. So we can't go there. Let's distract ourselves. And this is what the secularist is forced into. You see what I mean? Christianity is more rational because the secular worldview, when it follows out the rationality of its argument, concludes in despair. That's why Christianity is more rational, because Christianity can continue all the way down with its worldview, whereas secularism has to just despair and leave. So Keller continues, no one with this set of beliefs can get peace and meaning for daily life unless he stops thinking about the implications of his beliefs. How irrational is that? I can't keep thinking about the implications of my beliefs because they lead to complete insanity. So I can't keep thinking about it. I've got to stop, right? I've got to stop. That is irrationality in its highest form. Okay? Tolstoy said this. I don't know if you guys know Leo Tolstoy. Great author. Tolstoy said this. Same idea, guys. Why should I live? Why wish for anything or do anything? Is there any meaning in my life that the inevitable death awaiting me does not destroy? How can we fail to see this? This is what is surprising. One can only live while one is intoxicated with life. As soon as one begins to sober up, it is impossible to see that it is all a mere fraud and a stupid fraud. That's from Tolstoy. If you take secularist conclusions and just run them out, if you're rational as a secularist, you end with this. As soon as you sober up about life and you stop just enjoying yourself, you begin to realize this is all absurd. It's a mere fraud, and it's a stupid fraud at that. These are the logical, rational conclusions of secularism, and they're too much to bear. They are too much for the secularists to bear. Now, let me ask you guys a question. We're talking about downcast, despair, and meaninglessness. Okay? This is the rational conclusion of secularism. Despair and meaningless, downcast. Can a Christian feel downcast and meaningless? Can a Christian feel this same kind of despair that we're talking about? What do you guys think? Okay, I got an answer from Liam. Good. Again, can a Christian feel downcast, meaningless despair, just like we're talking about? Oh, I love it. Custers have a great answer. Okay, we're going to go through these guys. Liam says Christians can feel despair. Yes. Jesse nailed it. From experience, yes, but it's because we're inconsistent. It's an effect of the fall. Great, Jesse. Custer's nailed it as well. He can feel it in weakness, but then look at the truth of Scripture and know that he is wrong. See, here's the difference, guys. Both parties can feel downcast and meaningless. But when the secularist feels downcast and meaningless, they are acting consistently with their worldview. You see, it is actually the logical conclusion, it is the rational conclusion of their worldview to be full of despair and to feel meaningless. That is the rational conclusion of secularism. But it is irrational for a Christian to conclude the same way. You see the difference here, guys? We're not saying that secularists are always downcast and Christians are always upbeat and happy. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, for one party, it makes sense logically that they would be downcast and feel meaningless, and for another party, it doesn't make sense logically that they would feel downcast and meaningless. You see what we're saying? The Custers nailed it. Jesse nailed it. Okay? Martin says, I agree with the Custers. Just so you guys know, Martin on Twitch says, I agree with the Custers. Awesome. He can feel it in weakness, but then he looks at the truth of Scripture and he knows he is wrong. You see? Scripture, right here, what I have. Yes, a Christian can feel downcast and meaningless, but it's inconsistent with their worldview. It's actually not rational or logical for a Christian to feel that way. Again, the argument isn't about how we feel, but rather how we ought to feel given our beliefs. Secularists ought to feel downcast, meaningless because of their espoused worldview. If they were to be fully rational, that's where they would end up. And then they say, I can't stand that, so I just try to distract myself. Whereas the Christian who feels downcast and meaningless is actually acting irrationally. They are not acting consistently with their espoused beliefs. Andrew Riggs says, yes, Christians can feel downcast and meaningless, inasmuch as they can live for their self-created meaning and not their discovered meaning. There you go. Great point, Andrew. We often fall into this trap. We have a discovered meaning, but instead we often choose to live for our self-created meaning, which is a secular ideal, right? Riggs says, but we have a way out. Shirley says, yes, especially when you just think emotionally and forget that God is the one in control and look to him, not your feelings and circumstances. You guys nailed it. Exactly. Because of the worldview we have, because of the God we serve, we ought not to conclude in downcast and meaninglessness. Again, remember what we're talking about. This is why Christianity is more rational. Because you don't have to abandon your rationality in your worldview to live your life. Whereas secularists do. They say, my life feels meaningless. That feels bad. Let me stop thinking about it. Whereas the answer for Christians is, my life feels meaningless. That feels bad. Let me think more about it. You see the difference? It's so much more rational to follow Christianity because it helps you to contend with the problems and the struggles of life. Again, how can Christianity provide meaning that suffering can't take away from you? You realize, wow, I'm acting inconsistently when I believe this way. Good. Liam says, doesn't it depend on what they feel despair about? If an atheist feels despair about losing an important soccer game, are they being consistent? Everything is meaningless within the secularist worldview, Liam. Everything is meaningless. There's no purpose and intention behind any of it. Any pursuit, any goal, any love, any passion. It's all meaningless. And if it's all meaningless and they feel despair about it, it makes sense that they would feel despair about whatever, right? If everything's meaningless, everything is despairing, right? And so that's what we're trying to press them on. And you want to do this in a gentle way, right? But there really is no hope within the secularist worldview. There really is no hope. Okay? So that's how that's how Christianity is more rational. Because when you run up against the problems of life, Christianity says, think harder about it. Not that that's simply the answer, but you're not acting consistently, you're not believing correctly about the world. Whereas when secularists run up against meaninglessness, they say, don't think about it. You can't be rational about this because it'll lead to despair. Martin says, a consistent secularist couldn't say any soccer game is important. Exactly. Nothing is. Nothing is important, according to the secularist mindset. So that was the first argument, guys. What about the second one? If the Christian worldview is more rational than the secular worldview, how do you guys think the Christian worldview is more communal than the secular worldview? Think about it. How is the Christian worldview more communal than the secular worldview? And by communal, we mean genuine relationships and having a true unity of spirit with other human beings, right? That's what we mean by communal, okay? How do you guys think the Christian worldview is more communal than the secular worldview? Oh, sorry about that. Custers have an answer, and I'm just going to fix my camera real quick, guys. Good answer from the Custers. Riggs has a general comment I'm going to read while you guys are putting this down. Riggs says, created meaning leads to randomness, chaos, and conflict. Discovered purpose provides continuity through history and allows for true community through common purpose or pursuit. Got you. So Andrew was answering this question. Created meaning leads to randomness, okay? Chaos and conflict. Discovered purpose provides continuity through history and allows for true community through common purpose and pursuit. I like that a lot, Andrew. There's a lot to that, but I do like it quite a bit. The Custers say, works for people and promotes general welfare, not destructive and selfish. Good. Very good. Jesse says, you have to look outside of yourself to others, namely God, and are therefore not insular. Good. Also good. That's exactly right, guys. You guys are nailing it. Communal, okay? Secularism provides the basis. This is my quote. I keep quoting Keller and everyone else. I just typed this, guys. Felt really good about myself. Secularism provides the basis for a relentless individualism. A relentless individualism. That's what secularism leads to. If meaning and purpose is something you just create for yourself, if it's created and not discovered, there is a relentless individualism that results. It's all about you. It's all about your own created meaning and purpose, right? Individualism nowadays is actually looked down upon, right? Socialism is very, very popular in America today. Bernie Sanders was nearly the nominee, right, for the Democratic primaries. Bernie Sanders was nearly the nominee. Not quite, but nearly. And I could see in just a few generations him or somebody like him being the nominee. Okay? How does that happen? Individualism is looked down upon, especially amongst millennials and younger generations. They hate individualism. They absolutely hate it. They want a communal view of life. This is something they long for, they desire for. But here's the problem. Most of them are secularists. And secularism, taken out to its logical conclusion, is relentlessly individualistic. Even though they want socialism, communism, all these things, they don't recognize that their espoused worldview leads to relentless individualism rather than a communal spirit. Okay? Rather than a communal spirit. Josiah Royce says this, and I'm going to make this one big. Give me 1 second. Hold on. How do I make this? Oh, this is how I make this big. There we go. Then I'll make my head disappear. Josiah Royce says this. Why wasn't it enough simply to work, eat, sleep, and do the normal activities of daily life? Josiah Royce went on a pursuit to figure out where we get meaning and purpose from. And he said, man, it's not enough to just work, eat, sleep, and do the normal activities of daily life. He continues. His answer was that human beings could not live without dedication to a cause more important than their individual interests, right? Josiah Royce is saying essentially, we can tell, we can feel that we're meant for something more than individualism. We're meant for some sort of communal perspective, right? They needed a cause for which we were willing to sacrifice greatly. He believed that we are happy only if we make our meaning in life something greater than our happiness. Okay, again, listen to that. He believed that we are happy only if we make our meaning in life something greater than our happiness. If we reduce meaning and purpose to just our relentless individualism, we're actually not happy, ironically. That doesn't make us happy. Okay? And that was what Josiah Royce started to conclude. Charles Taylor puts it this way. Everyone has their right to develop their own form of life grounded in their own sense of what is really important of value. No one else can or should try to dictate its contents. Again, this is the spirit of the age. I get to pick my own meaning and purpose. I get to develop my own form of life grounded in my own sense of what's important, my own values, and you can't tell me what's right or wrong. You can't direct me or guide me in that. But again, this fails because it's a rugged individualism. It's completely individualistic. Keller says this, for example, we may believe it's wrong to starve the poor, but in a culture of created meanings, again, not discovered meanings, but created meanings, we are unable to say why it is so. All of us get together and agree we don't like the poor to starve, but we can't say why. We don't know why it's the case, right? Your meaning in life might be to help the needy, but my meaning in life might be to get rich by trampling upon them. How, in the context of self-created meanings, can you explain why my chosen meaning in life is wrong? How can you do that without telling me that there is a different meaning I ought to have? On what basis will you do that? Again, if meaning and purpose is reduced to whatever you create for yourself, then what ends up happening is there is no basis for ought in the world. You can't say somebody else ought to believe some way. Keller says this: in the end, if anyone you are disagreeing with about the poor still feels like holding on to his original position, nothing further can be said to gainsay him. Without socially shared discovered meaning, we have no basis for saying to somebody else, you need to stop doing that. We don't have any basis for it. If meaning and purpose is self-determined, it's created by yourself, and it's not discovered out there in the world independent of us, then there is no moral ought that exists. No moral ought that exists. And Keller concludes, created meanings cannot be the basis for a program of social justice. Created meanings cannot be the basis for a program of social justice. So can you guys see? I hope you can see the logical flow of argument there, okay? Created meanings can't be the basis for a program of social justice. And yet so many people who are secularists, who live in a world of created meanings, are passionate about that very thing, social justice. But it can't be the basis for it. They're cutting off their nose to spite their face, right? They're essentially saying, well, I believe in social justice, even though my entire worldview speaks against the idea of social justice. It's inconsistent and it's arbitrary. Created meanings can't be the basis for a program of social justice. There is no such thing as a moral ought when the only meanings and purposes in the world are created. Okay? And so that is how the secular worldview leads to a less communal mindset. Everything reduces to individualism. Social justice, if you really care about other people and you really care about community, you have to recognize that secularism doesn't lead to that. Secularism leads to a radical individualism, and that's all it leads to. It does not lead at all to social justice. And so if you care about social justice, that is an indicator that perhaps your worldview is wrong, and the secularism that you espouse does not lead you to the proper conclusions. Okay? Final one, guys. Final one, and we're going to end with this one tonight. Again, we're not answering the fool according to his folly. How is the Christian worldview more durable in terms of providing you meaning and purpose than a secular worldview? How is the Christian worldview more durable? How is discovered meaning more durable than created meaning? What do you guys think? This is my chance to drink my tea. We've already seen that Christian discovered meaning is more rational than secular created meaning. We also saw the fact that Christian discovered meaning is not only more rational, but more communal than secular created meaning. Finally now, how is Christian discovered meaning more durable? How will it stand up better than secular created meaning? What do you guys think? Matt says, sorry for the inactivity. I promise that I'm listening, though. No problem, Matt. I appreciate you listening in. Liam says, durable is it bends but doesn't break or fracture? ? Yeah, Liam, that's a good way to put it. Durable means it's not going to break or fracture. That it can withstand the trials, that it can withstand the storms. Think of durable, Liam, like this. Remember when Jesus tells the parable of building a house on rock versus building a house on sand? The house built on rock that can stand against the storms of life is a durable house. The house built on sand that cannot withstand the storms and it falls down is not a durable house. So that might help you think of the idea. Jesus told that parable, I know you're familiar with. Durable is that house that can stand the storms. It doesn't break and fall down. Good question, Liam. Okay, I got good answers from Martin. I got good answers from Jesse. Custers are dropping in. And Andrew Riggs has an answer. Perfect. Let's go through all of these, guys. Let's see. Martin says, since the meaning exists apart from our emotions, our meaning is not dependent on things that vary over time, like a state of mind. Very nice, Martin. It's exactly right. Meaning exists apart from our emotions. So if our state of mind is difficult or falling apart, our meaning or purpose doesn't change. Whereas if your meaning and purpose is created and your state of mind is fragmented or falling apart, it might change. Jesse says, if suffering occurs, even if it doesn't make sense to the individual, it can still have meaning because of the outside orchestration and source. Very nice. Very nice. When your meaning is discovered and it's outside of yourself, then the suffering doesn't cause it to all fall apart, right? It actually still has a purpose and intention because of orchestration and source from God, of course. Andrew says it cannot be dictated by circumstances. Very nice. It can't be dictated by circumstances. Again, because meaning and purpose for the Christian is discovered. It's outside of ourselves, so it's not dependent on our circumstances. Andrew continues, understanding discovered meaning can be passed down while created meaning ends with you. Very good. Your discovered meaning can be inherited, right? It's something that we can communicate to others, right? Whereas created meaning, all you can really do is try to describe it to others because it begins and ends with yourself. It's all up to you. Shirley, great answer. Shirley says, it cannot be destroyed by adversity. That is why Christian discovered meaning is more durable. It can't be destroyed by adversity. Great. The Custers say, it provides stability in all circumstances. We can be satisfied even when Christ is magnified at our expense. That is a miracle. Amen. Absolutely. Stability in all circumstances, satisfied even when Christ is magnified at our expense. Right? That's the irony of it. When you have a discovered meaning and purpose, there's room for sacrifice. There's room for me to lose myself in a cause that's greater than me. A created meaning or purpose can only have that if you define it for yourself. But because it's radically individualistic, it's not likely to conclude that way. Great answers, guys. Very good. And I appreciate all the participation. It makes the study way better, I think. Let me go to the big screen again. And we're just going to look at some of these ideas in depth. How is it more durable? Viktor Frankl was a Jewish doctor who survived the death camps during World War II. His famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, explored the reason why some people under those horrendous conditions seemed to stay strong and kind, while others simply gave up or even became collaborators in order to survive. His conclusion was that it had to do with the person's meaning in life. Okay? So a perfect condition to examine the durability of these worldviews. Death camps in World War II, man's search for meaning. Why do some people stay strong? Why do some people continue to pursue and persist even with these horrible conditions? Why can some people be kind to others without giving up? That was his question. He said it has to do with their meaning in life. He continues. Frankl discovered that the only way for the prisoners' humanity to survive was to relocate the main meaning of their lives to some transcendent reference point, something beyond this life and even beyond this world. All other religions and cultures outside of secular society do this. Do you hear that, guys? That's really key to understand. All other religions and cultures outside of secular society do this. They relocate your meaning or your purpose to something outside of yourself. It's not in you, it's somewhere else, right? So even in Hinduism, Buddhism, all these other world religions, they say it's not about you, it's about transcending you or things like that. Right? And this type of meaning and purpose that is outside of yourself, outside of your circumstances, can allow you to persist even amidst trouble, right? But secularism, ironically, is the worst equipped to deal with suffering. Because if your meaning and purpose is created in yourself, then suffering completely destroys your meaning and purpose. It absolutely destroys it, top to bottom. Let's continue. Keller says this, secularism is the only worldview whose members must find their main meaning within this life. All other ways of understanding the world hold that this life is not the whole story, but with secularism, it is. This ends up being the Achilles heel, guys, of secularism. Secularism essentially says because your meaning and purpose begins and ends with you, and there's nothing to this life or world except for you, then your meaning and purpose can be lost. And it begins and ends with you. It lives or dies with you. And so, when you face adversity in this life, when you face suffering in this life, if this life is messed up, your meaning and purpose is destroyed along with it. You see, Christians can go through trials. Christians can go through trials in this life, just like anyone else. But when we go through those trials, we think to ourselves, earth is not my home. I'm looking for a better hope. I'm looking for a better future. And we can last. We're more durable under those struggles. Not because we're better people, but our worldview allows us to be more durable. Whereas secularism, if you have defined your meaning and purpose, and your meaning and purpose fail, you fail as well. You begin to die. You begin to fall apart. There's a massive difference here, okay? Again, just going to go to the big screen here. If your material world is shattered in secularism, your meaning goes with it. You need to recognize that, guys. If your material world is shattered in secularism, your meaning goes along with it, okay? Now, we've essentially critiqued all these other positions, okay? We have critiqued secularism from the rational, from the communal, and from the suffering, essentially, standpoint, right? How do you go about this with others? Do you go up to them and tell them, well, your life is meaningless and purposeless, and it's not rational? And no, you don't do that, right? But recognize that that's what you're getting at with the unbeliever as you talk with them. That's what you're driving towards, right? That's what you're trying to accomplish, okay? You're trying to get them to see that as you have that discussion with them. And so you'll have that discussion with them, and you're going to be asking good questions to try to get them to see that their worldview is unsustainable, that their worldview doesn't allow them to live in this life, in this world, okay? That's what you're trying to get them to do, trying to get them to recognize that and see that. Shirley mentioned at the beginning, we ask the why question, right? They'll say something to you like, well, I believe that you can create your own meaning and purpose as long as you don't hurt somebody else. All you have to ask is why. Why? Oh, because society would never advance if we could hurt others. Why should I care about that? Why should I care about society? Why shouldn't I just care about myself, right? You're answering the fool according to his folly in that case. And then after you demonstrate it doesn't make sense, you're going to not answer the fool according to his folly. You're going to say, from a Christian worldview, this is why we hold to these things, okay? So that's what we're getting at. Okay, this is my last slide, guys. I know it's a big quote, but I wanted to read this whole thing to you because I thought it perfectly summarized the chapter, okay? We've been talking about secularism the whole time, but think about this mindset, guys. Think about this mindset. This is from Keller, directly from the book. Keller says this: part of the richness of the Christian life lies in the ways Christianity gives meaning that are distinct from not only secularism, but from other religions as well. Okay, we've been critiquing secularism, yes, but Christianity also differs in how it gives meaning and purpose to people's lives, even in these other areas. Okay? Unlike the concept of karma, for example, Christianity teaches that suffering is often unfair, not merited by actions from a former life. You see what he's doing here, guys? You see what he's doing? Karma says if you are suffering, it's your fault because in a previous life you did something wrong, and therefore that's why you're suffering. It's all karma, okay? And yet Christianity says no. Sometimes suffering happens and it wasn't warranted, such as in the Job situation, right? The karma principle, Hinduism, essentially teaches what Job's friends taught him, and it's wrong. It's an unbiblical worldview. Sometimes people suffer even though they don't deserve it. Sometimes they do, right? Christianity teaches that. It gives a better answer to meaning and purpose than Hinduism does. It's a little different than our arguments for secularism, but it's the same idea. Answer a fool according to his folly. Do not answer a fool according to his folly. Follow that twofold method, okay? He continues. Unlike Buddhism, Christianity teaches that suffering is a terrible reality, not an illusion to be transcended with stoic detachment. I don't know if you guys know much about Buddhism, but Buddhism essentially says your problem is your desires. Your desires are the problem. And so what you need to do is change yourself so that you don't have any desires. If you don't have any desires, then you won't have any suffering. Why won't you have any suffering if you don't have any desires? Because you weren't hoping for any outcome one way or another. So you're not going to suffer. Suffering, says Buddhism, is a result of your desires running up against reality. Instead, says Buddhism, get rid of your desires. Well, is that a satisfying answer to the suffering we come across? No. Christianity teaches that suffering is a reality. It's not fake, just imposed upon the world by your desires. It's actually real. Suffering is a terrible reality. It's not an illusion that you just need to transcend with Stoic detachment. Again, unlike ancient fatalism, such as Greek Stoics, or some shame and honor cultures, Christianity finds nothing particularly noble about suffering. Some worldviews have taught that suffering is noble in and of itself, that just the act of suffering is something that's good and you should go through. Christianity says, no, that's not necessarily the case. It's part of a fallen world. Christianity says that suffering should not be welcomed necessarily, right? But it's something that's a reality. Christianity deals with the reality of suffering without saying it's an ought, that, we ought to live according to one way or another. Okay? So you can see how the Christian worldview has better answers for purpose and for meaning than both secularism, we studied that all night, but also than other worldviews as well. It doesn't matter who you're talking to, guys. They don't have to be a secularist. It's the same method every time. You answer a fool according to his folly. You do not answer a fool according to his folly. So you just ask, you talk to somebody. They say, oh, I'm Hare Krishna, right? How many in the chat know what Hare Krishnas believe? Probably not many, right? Just start asking them questions. You don't have to know what Hare Krishnas believe in order to witness to Hare Krishnas. Ask them about suffering and meaning. Ask them about purpose. What's our purpose in a Hare Krishna religion? I'm interested. Just have a dialogue with them and have a discussion with them. And once you ask them what our purpose and meaning is, then your wheels start turning. And you start thinking, okay, how is that inadequate? How does that not feel right? How does it feel like it doesn't answer the question? And how does it feel like Christianity gives a better answer to those questions than the Hare Krishna is giving me? That's apologetics, guys. That's what it is. It's conversations with people, constantly asking, how does their worldview fall short, and how does the Christian worldview bolster these truths? And you're just constantly doing that. You're just constantly doing that. That's all apologetics is, guys. Answer a fool according to his folly. Do not answer a fool according to his folly. Back and forth, over and over again. Genuine conversations and real interactions with people. Unlike secularism, says Keller, Christianity teaches that suffering can be meaningful, and that it can make you something great. You see how Christianity has the perfect balance? We experience suffering in our lives, we experience difficulties, we experience trials, and Christianity has good ways of explaining and describing suffering, meaning, and purpose. Christianity has great ways of describing all those things. Every other religion, and secularism included, falls short in some way, shape, or form. And that is our job as apologetics, to draw out how those worldviews fall short and to demonstrate how the Christian worldview gives the answers, provides the answers of life. Okay? That's it, guys. That's it. That is all I've got for tonight. I hope that was helpful for you. We just finished question 3, guys. How can Christianity provide meaning that suffering can't take away from you? We answered that question. Last week, we answered the fool according to his folly, and this week we did not answer a fool according to his folly. And that's all we did. It's the same method. Next week, we will move on to question 4. Let me look at what question 4 is real quick, so I can give you something to look forward to. Question 4 is about satisfaction in life. Satisfaction in life. Does secularism provide satisfaction in life? And does it provide a satisfaction that can last, that can hold up under life circumstances? What about Christianity? That's what we're going to be talking about next time. Okay? Tina Thetford dropping in the chat. No way. No way is Tina Thetford dropping in the chat. Tina Thetford says, I love that last sentence. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for dropping in the chat. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that encouragement. Okay, guys. So that's what we're focused on here. That's what we want to help with, right? So next time we're going to be answering question 4. And we're going to use the same method. Answer a fool according to his folly. Do not answer a fool according to his folly. A satisfaction that's not based on circumstances. How can Christianity provide satisfaction in life that isn't based upon your circumstances? That's where we're going next time. Please feel free to type any of your last-minute questions, comments, or concerns. I love this time for interaction. If you have other things you want to talk about, other things you want to communicate to the chat, and I'll read them out loud. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to pray. Don't feel the need to close your eyes and pray with me. Use this time to type into the chat so we can have some interaction, because there's a little bit of a delay, and if you're praying along with me, and then I open my eyes and there's no comments in the chat, I'm going to assume everyone wants to be done, okay? So I'm going to pray for us. And then while I'm praying for us, go ahead and type your questions in the chat, and we'll have a little bit of interaction before we close out, okay? Father God, you are so good. You're so awesome. You're so holy. You're so worthy of all praise. We thank you for your grace and your mercy. And I pray, Father, that as we continue to consider these things throughout the rest of our weeks, you would help us to think as Christians ought to think. And you would help us to reach out to others and provide hope and satisfaction during a time of suffering and difficulty. Thank you for all that you've done for us, God. You are so good. And please help us to rely upon your Son as we move forward in our lives and with our lives, and in our hearts, excuse me. Thank you for your grace and mercy, Lord. Please be with us this evening. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right, guys. I'm looking at the chat. I see nothing fresh. I'm going to give a couple sips of my tea, and then if there are no more comments, we are going to end. Raspberry tea. Brad Marsha Allen on Facebook says, I love how encouraging you are in response to everyone's answers. Well, thank you, Marsha. I really appreciate that. I think it's important to create an environment, and I'm not, I hope it doesn't come off as disingenuous either, right? A lot of people can be supportive, but they're like being fake, you know? I think it's really important to create, I think it's important for learning. I actually think it's important for learning and for teaching to create an environment where it is safe to be wrong or right. You know what I mean? That's so essential, because many of us don't learn by just sitting under a lecture. Many of us learn by interacting with the material. It's kind of like Play-Doh sometimes. Some people need to shape and mold the material into something, right? And if I say make a dinosaur, and you make something that kind of looks like a dinosaur but kind of not, right? I can say, hey, you're doing good, but try this a little different, try that a little different. And that will help that person to learn. So that's very important to me, to create a safe environment. And what I mean by that is for learning. It's important to be able to interact with ideas to learn well. So thank you for that encouragement, Marcia. I really appreciate that. Shirley says, I find I have to go back and reread a lot of the info in this book just to comprehend what is being said. That's really good, Shirley. It's really good. Some of this stuff is very philosophical. I've been trying to boil it down and make it as simple as I can, but some of this stuff is very philosophical, right? And I think rereading and redigesting the material can be very, very helpful. I want you to know, Shirley, when I first ventured into apologetics, it took me many rereads of many books to even get my brain around it. They're complicated philosophical ideas. And if you haven't engaged in philosophy much in your life, you're going to find these concepts difficult to interact with. But I promise you, if you keep going after it, if you keep reading and redigesting and thinking about it, all those things, it's going to help you to interact with the material more. So very good point, Shirley. And just so you guys know, Shirley picked up the book and she keeps going back through the chapters as we talk about them because it helps her to understand the material better. I'd encourage everyone to do that. If you're struggling with the material, pick up the book and read through. We're on chapter 4 at this point, guys. So think about those things, and the book could be very, very helpful. Shirley picked up the Kindle edition. You could be reading it tonight. All right, guys. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? All right, sold. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, guys. I hope this was a blessing to you. I hope it was helpful to you. I love apologetics, and I love talking about our faith and how we can most effectively communicate it to unbelievers. Thank you so much for your guys' interaction tonight. This was fantastic. Everybody was typing answers in the chat. Great interactions, and I really appreciate that. I think it makes the teaching better, and it helps to encourage others as well. Liam says good night. Good night, Liam, and good night to everyone out there. May the Lord be with you the rest of this week, and may he bless you in your time and prepare your heart to worship him this upcoming Lord's Day. Take care. God bless. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye now.